Our first matter of the morning is to address 3 agenda items under our SPLOST tab, and those items will be brought by our DOT Director, Drew Raessler.
Good morning, Chairwoman, Commissioners, County Manager. Thank you for your time this morning. Glad to be able to present this presentation first and then consider the 2 agenda items. By way of background, on November 17th, 2022, the board authorized staff to develop a list of projects for consideration of a potential mobility SPLOST. This list is based on numerous outreach points, including stakeholder engagements with cities, CIDs, universities, the hospital, and others, 8 town halls, online engagement, catching riders where they are, pop-ups, literature distribution, and many, many more opportunities where we got in front of the public. Before I jump into this presentation, I'd like to thank you all for your time that you have spent meeting with us to talk about your desires, your areas, your communities, as well as staff. I'd like to thank Laura and her planning staff, as well as Jonathan, who is here today. With that, I will jump in and talk about the presentation today. We will start with vision, then talk about the goals of the list development, the key connections that the list of projects provides, background and outreach, the actual projects themselves, additional considerations, and then next steps. So before we jump into the specific projects, I did want to start with vision. And you see the vision here. This was developed in coordination with a subcommittee of TAB members that came together to just talk about what it is that they would like to see as your representatives, the community's representatives to transit to the county. And they came up with building connectivity to promote a thriving community for all. Additionally, not only did this serve as the vision as one of the guiding principles of developing this list of projects, it also is consistent with the strategic plan. And just to quote from the strategic plan, the vision that is in there, for all of the county departments, it is Cobb County is a thriving, innovative, and safe community that enhances quality of life for the well-being of all. And many of these same themes are in this vision here. Thriving community for all, of course, is from that strategic plan vision. And then building connectivity. Connectivity was one of those key areas of emphasis within the strategic plan. And connectivity of people, not so much modes, but people to jobs, school, medical, and the daily needs. So now, goals of the actual project development. First was mobility options, a core functional goal that included everything from walking and biking to transit options, connectivity to jobs and housing choices. Again, this is a theme that came from the strategic plan. Lowering transportation costs, both specific transportation costs like parking when someone goes to a special event, as well as more general transportation costs that things like microtransit can help to serve. Innovate. Innovation was another area of emphasis within the strategic plan, but thinking beyond traditional solutions and utilizing technology to the greatest extent possible to serve the mobility needs of the public today and into the future. And then ultimately a thriving future, recognizing the future demand on the transportation system. Before we jump into the projects, I wanted to start with the end first and talk about the key connections that this list of projects does provide. First, it's direct connections into 3 different MARTA stations, which helps with regional transit connectivity, transportation connectivity throughout the Metro Atlanta region. Those 3 MARTA stations, of course, are Dunwoody, Arts Center, and H.E. Holmes across the northern, northwestern, and then western parts of the Atlanta system, and providing connectivity again for the regional county system as it fits together. Countywide microtransit zones. This is a slight modification from some of the maps that we've seen earlier, but does bring microtransit countywide because that was one of the areas that we heard from the public that if we were to bring this forward, that they did want to bring it forward countywide. All 7 cities are connected with this plan through direct fixed route service, as well as the 3 community improvement districts. Additionally, central employment and healthcare centers are connected by this plan. Everything from Six Flags to the Battery to the CIDs and our core employment centers throughout the county. Both KSU campuses, as well as other higher education institutions, including Chattahoochee Tech and Life University, are connected with this plan of projects, as well as bicycle and pedestrian connectivity to make sure that it is a complete picture transportation plan and connection into Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, both directly and then with some aspirational commuter options to the airport as well. I spoke about resources, and there are three that I want to highlight. The first being the strategic plan. These are three strategies from the mobility and transportation section that talk about enhanced mobility and connectivity, enhanced transportation infrastructure, and reduced travel delays. Again, I mentioned that before, but it stitches through the entirety of this presentation and the project list. Additionally, from more of a technical foundation is the comprehensive transportation plan that was adopted last year that provides these 6 areas of emphasis, as well as a foundation of technical analysis and projects that were utilized as a resource in the project development. All 6 of these are really important, and each can be highlighted and identified throughout the entirety of the project list that we will see today. And then finally, to build on this strategic and technical foundation was the SPLOST public outreach that the board supported over this last year. That included 8 open houses, an online survey. Staff did a phenomenal job developing a story map. I hope everyone has had time to review that because it really lays out very logically and understandably what all is included within this. In terms of the survey, the 3 priorities that we heard from the public included transportation alternatives to traffic, improving mobility options for people who can't drive or choose not to, and finally, access to jobs. Now to the program of projects. This is the overall breakdown of those SPLOST components. It is in your SPLOST or in your agenda packet as a traditional SPLOST booklet that breaks down into these various components. It covers both the operational costs as well as the capital costs so that it is a fully funded transportation program that is multimodal, countywide, and innovative at its core. Now to the high-capacity transit system. This is the foundation of the system that is really based on where there is current demand. You will see here primarily the Northwest Corridor as well as the route that goes from Marietta to South Cobb and into H.E. Holmes. This represents our 2 highest ridership routes today, the Route 10 and the Route 30. It connects those core business areas that we spoke about from KSU and Town Center into Marietta and Cumberland, as well as Six Flags and Mableton. Connectivity also to MARTA, and doing so with high frequency service in the 15 to 20 minute frequency timeframe, fast and competitive trip times, and a system that is reliable and accessible for the most densely populated and employment areas of the county. Again, off-board fare collection to make sure that trip can happen quickly throughout. Microtransit service, I spoke earlier about the expansion to countywide coverage, and just to talk about this map here a little bit, this map breaks down into 14 different zones. The way this microtransit service would work, it would be a curb-to-curb trip within that zone. So someone that lives in the zone and seeks to go to a medical appointment or to a grocery store within that zone would be able to do so through a direct trip with a microtransit service. It would be a smaller vehicle, perhaps a minivan that is a Cobb County vehicle that has drivers that have been appropriately vetted and vehicles that are appropriately maintained as well. Now for trips outside of that zone, it would include a transfer to the fixed route system to be able to make the trip to the final destination. And what this provides is broad service area coverage, including the less densely populated areas to make sure, again, that this is countywide in its scope and reach, provides connectivity and access to transit for all Cobb County residents. It specifically benefits the mobility of older adults seeking to age in place and connects residents to more jobs and services outside of the fixed route system. Also, transit operations. This represents an expansion of the existing fixed route system. In addition to the expanded operating area, it's also higher frequency service, going to 15 to 30 minute frequencies based on the peak hours. Included within that is expanded paratransit service that covers those with mobility challenges in a 3/4 buffered area around these fixed route services, streamlined fare collection, and then daily service with expanded operating hours throughout. Also, vehicles, facilities, and amenities. The first goal of this component is to make sure that the system remains in a state of good repair, that what is built on day one continues to operate throughout the duration of the program. Included within that are technology enhancements, things like emergency notifications, other items that provide a safe and comfortable rider experience, easier access to the transit system, improvements like the Breeze Mobile 2.0 that we've just had rolled out onto our buses, information about the time to the next bus, public art at critical shelters throughout, walkable, bikeable access, integrated apps, Wi-Fi availability, and alternative fuel vehicles on this system. Additionally, transit technology. The department and the county have led on traffic technology with our traffic management center that has had incredible success in managing special events as well as congestion throughout the county. And what this component allows is for an expansion of that technology and utilizing innovative options to improve operations of the transit system, both directly through operations, things like connected vehicles and traffic signal priority, autonomous vehicles, expedited fare collections, and active management of the system, as well as transit technology to improve the user experience through apps and bus information, departure and arrival times. Transit supportive projects, again, with the goal of being fully comprehensive in its reach. Not only has the system gone to countywide, but has also looked to other modes to make sure that the program being presented today is multimodal in its scope. Each of this includes corridor reconsiderations or revitalizations through complete streets, major mobility improvements, including grade separations, as well as trails, intersection improvements, and sidewalks along the transit system to improve the accessibility to the transit system and the operations of the transit system. A few additional considerations for your consideration this morning is this program of projects provides 100% coverage to access jobs in Cobb County, 100% coverage of vulnerable populations as well. Reduced demand for parking, provides an alternative to traffic congestion, provides an opportunity to leverage the federal infrastructure investment, as well as transferring the current funding, which is currently in the general fund, to a sales tax resource that provides opportunity to fund through both residents and visitors of Cobb County. In terms of next steps, today, the next two agenda items that you will consider, the first is to request authorization to submit the updated projects to the Atlanta Transit Link Authority for inclusion in the Atlanta Regional Transit Plan, which is a requirement of House Bill 930 for a referendum to be called in November. Second is a request to approve the funding for educational support materials. This accepts funding from both Town Center and Cumberland CIDs, as well as makes a fund balance appropriation to make those funds available for a future task order award at a later meeting. And then in terms of future tasks, we have meetings with the qualified municipalities, which will have to precede a call for projects, coordination with the Atlanta Transit Link Authority, authorization to hold the referendum based on a final list of projects. So actually this list will serve as a first read of those projects. After we go through that official process of meeting with the municipalities, updating the ARTP, you will have a second and final read of this list of projects. And then, of course, throughout that legislative process is public education to make sure that the voters understand what all is included within the program. Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation, and I'll be glad to accept any questions.
Thank you, Drew. Appreciate that presentation and all the work that has transpired between our last work session on the SPLOST and today's meeting. Commissioners, do you have any comments or questions for Drew before we go into our next agenda item? Okay, we'll start with Commissioner Sheffield, and then we'll go to Burrows.
I just had a quick question regarding the micro transit service. Does the paratransit fit into this category? And we had conversations about it, but if you can just share your response.
Of course. So if I could maybe talk for just a moment about the on-demand transit options that are included within this program, because there are three, and they would all need to fit together cohesively throughout. So first is the microtransit service that we spoke about with the 14 zones that provides transit options, curb-to-curb transit options, as well as transfers to anyone and everyone within Cobb County. And it would be through very similar to a ride-share app or a ride-hailing app that someone would have today. But again, just tight to that particular area. Now, in terms of paratransit, it is both something that we should include and something that is required to be included by the Federal Transit Administration, in that this is duplicating the fixed route service that anyone that is able-bodied has the ability to go and utilize, and buffers that fixed route service with a paratransit service. And what that allows is for someone that does need to get within that zone, say along Route 10 or along Route 30 from Town Center to Cumberland, it allows them to make a paratransit trip or schedule a paratransit trip. An accessible vehicle shows up, allows them to, or boards that particular passenger. It's still a share trip, but it is required and would provide competitive times to transit within. So those lay on top of each other. They do not compete. They really complement each other, one for everyone and one for those with mobility challenges. And then finally, the way it works today is outside of that paratransit area, we also have a voucher program where someone can purchase vouchers and then work with a private transportation company to be able to make that final trip. And that, while it doesn't provide direct paratransit service, does allow for someone to take a trip outside of the paratransit zone to something like the VA and indicator. And that's the other piece that is included within this is overlaying the county with a voucher eligibility program to allow for someone to be able to make those trips with a private transportation company to those critical resources outside the county.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Burrow.
Thank you, Drew. Is this where you want us to discuss our support or not support, or after the motion?
Yes, there's no motion associated with this particular agenda item. This agenda item is just for the presentation.
Okay.
The next two agenda items do have corresponding votes.
Okay.
It may be
Then
appropriate when we have the
I'll wait.
resolution.
Okay, thank you. Well, one question I do have that I'd like Drew to acknowledge is this is transit only, no transportation unless it is related to transit. As far as when this first started, we had several options with the two House Bill, Senate Bill 930 and 170. And at one point in time, one of the options was another 5-year for roads improvements, resurfacing sidewalks, but this is just for transit and projects related to transit for sidewalks or road improvements. So I just want to point that out, make sure that's correct.
That is correct. This list of projects is pursuant to House Bill 930, which requires all projects to be either associated with direct operations and capital of transit or accessibility to transit.
Okay. And I'd just like to say thank you to you and your staff for working with this board for several years on all the options and presentations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Richardson.
Really to just reiterate the thank you and appreciate making sure we're tying this to the actual needs in the community. I do know that we were looking at the overlay so that you can go outside of those microtransit districts, but also, of course, looking at the circulator opportunities with specific departments so that those needs can be met directly for veterans, for seniors, et cetera, and definitely appreciate the consideration on that front. And then, yeah, that's just appreciate all the hard work put in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gambrill.
Again, thank you, Drew. I know this started prior to me coming in office in 2019, so I know your staff has worked on this for quite a long time with Kimberly Horn, and I thank you for that.
Okay. Thank you, Drew. We can go on to the next agenda item.
Of course. Our next agenda item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners adopt a resolution accepting the Cobb County Mobility Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax, MSPLOST, proposed program of projects, authorizing staff to proceed with development of an MSPLOST ballot referendum for November 2024, and authorizing submission of proposed Cobb Link transit projects to the Atlanta Region Transit Link Authority for consideration as an amendment to the ATL Regional Transit Plan and inclusion in the ARTP update.
Okay. So moved as presented.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, why don't I just go down the entire dais, and I'll begin with Commissioner Gamble, but I believe that Commissioner Burrow would like to submit her statement to the clerk.
I'd like the clerk to record my statement as found on page 337 of the current agenda. I have a real hard time supporting this 30-year Mobility SPLOST, and it's nothing that, again, your staff did, but it's truly not reaching the needs of our citizens. While it's going to put in 106 or 108 miles of additional transit, we know folks pretty much don't ride the buses currently, but it's not going to address any of our traffic from our friends from the north and west that affect my district to help them move through the county. Essentially, this Mobility SPLOST is going to cost $54,000 to bring in the 200,000 new citizens that this is being taught that we need in order to reach our million that is predicted by the ARC. What's interesting, though, is we're also then going to start gentrifying areas that we're trying to preserve and keep as affordable, which will no longer become affordable for citizens of Cobb County, as we saw happen in the Battery. I know reference was made to, it was great to ride transit in New York. It's great to ride transit in New York, but you can't afford to live in New York. And I just hate to see Cobb County go to a New York or a DC for the sake of transit that many won't utilize.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you. I know at length I've given my commentary on MSPLOST and T-SPLOST and how absolutely both types of investments are necessary for this county, and that's something that I will continue to work to try to provide. That being said, I am interested in the more aspirational projects that the MSPLOST does provide us in leveraging some of those federal assets so that we can spread the demand and make sure that traffic coming from the northern part of the state can actually flow pretty freely and make sure that we're creating that space for that. It is an aspirational project, but it can get us there. And that's inclusive of the southern counties as well, and knowing the impact of that demand that's driving into our communities, and it is helping to move those prices of the houses up here, and that is hurting our residents. So making sure that that demand can be spread more evenly is important to me. And then certainly there are all kinds of needs all across the county, and so I think that this is, while not a comprehensive fulfillment of those needs, it is a step in that direction. And like I said, I am committed to making sure that we can also close out the other end of that, and that's the surface transportation improvements. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Burrow.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Drew, for working with all of us and presenting several options over the years, and I know this is what we've landed on. I cannot support this, as I've said many times. A 30-year tax is too intense, and it's not needed. And that's one of the reasons is the burden that it will put on our grandchildren and maybe great-grandchildren. We won't be here in 30 years. I won't be here in 30 years. I won't be alive in 30 years. And the other thing is it's transit only, and or any transportation projects like sidewalks or road improvements have to be tied to transit. Nothing for, road improvements, intersection improvements throughout the county in general or in districts. So in the past, I've always supported our county SPLOST going to a referendum, but the maximum they were 6 years. And they had not just transportation DOT projects, but also libraries, parks, and other public safety and other departments. And they were for 6 years at the most since I've been on this board. But I can't support a 30-year tax, not even going to a referendum. But if it passes, it'll still be up to the voters to decide. And that's the bottom line. The voters need to decide. So, thank you again for all your hard work.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sheffield?
Thank you, Drew, for all of your hard work on this project. When you and I sat down maybe about a year or so ago, and we talked about the 30-year tax, do you recall my initial reaction?
I'm sorry, I do not.
My initial reaction was 30 years is way too long to do anything, if you recall. But after having conversations about what that meant, I understand that part of the 30 years is for the projects, and then part of it is to operate the project. I've shared several times as late as yesterday that Cobb County is growing, and that's just a fact. We're growing. We're nearly at 800,000 people with 1 million expected in just maybe 20 years or so. With that becomes the responsibility of ensuring that we move our residents quickly and efficiently through the county. In my district, which is the southernmost district, southernmost part of Cobb County, we have students that live along Riverside Parkway that attend Kennesaw State, and it takes greater than 2 hours to go to school. That's way too long to get to school. There was a reference made about New York in the transit and the correlation between affordability and the transportation system. And I'd just like to add, as a native New Yorker, the transportation system in New York is more about a function of convenience. It's not a function of or distinction of the haves versus have-nots, and I'm not suggesting that that's the opinion of anyone here on this board. And I oftentimes joke that in New York, you can have a Broadway actor sitting next to a homeless person. In most instances, that's probably one and the same. But it's a mode of convenience. It's a mode of transportation. Had it not been for our transportation in New York City, I would likely not have been able to go to college. Where I grew up in Brooklyn, near Coney Island, which is the very, very tip of Brooklyn, I traveled on subway for over an hour to get to school, but I had that access. Had I not had that access, I would not have had access to education, quite possibly. So it's about getting through the county efficiently, accessing the amenities that the county has, but also creating access. When we talk about affordable housing and things of that nature, it's not affordable in some cases because people may not have the skill set to have a job to be able to afford it. So when we talk about affordable housing, it's not just lowering the price of housing to make it affordable, but it's also helping people to increase their skill set to be able to afford it. So this is one vehicle, no pun intended, in which that can occur. As we move forward in having our town halls, meeting with the community, the people will let us know what their position is with respect to transportation. The generations are getting younger. Things are changing. There is a generation, I speak for myself, that will likely may not utilize the service as much as a younger person who maybe just graduated from college, who cannot afford a vehicle, but they have access to transportation. So I'm supportive. I look forward to how this plays out with the community, and I just encourage everyone to come out to the town halls and learn for yourself. Form your own opinions. Let's not be in silos. Let's not have our own prejudices as it relates to transportation. I just ask that you have an open mind as we move forward to present this to you on behalf of Cobb County. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sheffield. Very well said. The last time that our board spoke about a 30-year project, it was in this room in November of 2013 when we were discussing the Brave Stadium. And we were discussing whether or not this investment would be worth that type of commitment from our citizens. And it wasn't only for a 30-year time period, but it was for a significant amount of money at a time where we still had not recovered from a recession, and our operational levels at the county had not approached pre-recession levels. But there was enthusiasm amongst board members that saw the vision and the impact that that project could have. Here we have a project today that perhaps doesn't have the nostalgia of a baseball stadium, but I think is transformative in what it could do for our entire county and for our future. The time preceding that, when I heard of transformation happening in our county, also pertained to infrastructure when people referred to Ernest Barrett and his investment in building out sewer infrastructure throughout the county in anticipation of what it could do. And his consideration of Cobb County being a significant place within our region and within our state because of the intersection of the interstates that were here. We have a moment of transformation before us today that perhaps has some consideration of both of those undertakings within our county. And I'm pretty sure that there were voices of reasonable concern at both of those periods in time about why not now. But I can share that there are some reasonable considerations of why now here for Cobb. What I've seen of this board over the past 3 years in light of the 13 that I've served, not 13, going on 12 here in the county, is that this is a board of action. This is a board that wants to get things done. I haven't seen any other board more poised to do this. And there's always some consideration of maybe the next one, the next time the next opportunity. And sometimes my frustration of serving on this board, I'm not our most tenured, but is seeing moments of opportunity come and go with the perception that we'll have tomorrow to address things that could have been addressed yesterday. It is my understanding that Cobb County has had the consideration of robust investment in transit for almost 50 years now. I think if we continue to move this down the road, or kick this can down the road, we know one thing for sure: we will continue to grow as a county, and we will continue to have more transportation impact in the county from cars. And we will continue to be more diverse, and not just in race, but in age and in interest. And I think we're at a key opportunity to provide commensurate options for our community when we talk about mobility for all. There are some who, like me, my choice mode of transportation is a vehicle. But that doesn't mean I don't understand the value of what this can do for our county. This is transformation. And it's not just about mobility from a vehicular perspective, but it's mobility also from an economic perspective. When I did visit New York, I was also born in New York, but when I recently visited for our rating agency, I realized that people can live anywhere in New York, some places in New Jersey, and no matter what walk of life you're in, you can work in downtown Manhattan in a skyrise and have the option or opportunity of mobility in wherever you may want to go in life, because you can get there. Here, I think when we don't provide transportation options, we limit opportunity, and Commissioner Sheffield gave a great example of how it enhanced her life. And in fact, the study we did in 2018 regarding transportation shows that 80% of our residents are using transit to get to work or to school, which means in Cobb, transit is significantly economic mobility, but it's not enhanced as it could be. We also have opportunity to provide mobility for all. And Commissioner Gamble is right. It's, perhaps there are concerns about it being less activated in North Cobb. And there was a push and pull about how responsive we are to people saying they want their communities the same. But I think providing a micro-transit opportunity, even as we consider people like my son who need a vehicle to get to work, or people who are aging who need a vehicle to get to places of medical care or to a grocery store, they can have that option anywhere in Cobb and to do anything in between. And guess what? If they don't need it, it's their choice. We have significant opportunity for transformation here in Cobb for all the reasons that are listed in the packet here. And those reasons, I hope, are sufficient for this board to not just consider us for this moment, but for the future. And I can say, unlike the last transformative project that we did that had a 30-year time frame, this is a pay-as-you-go model. We don't have to go into debt for this project. This is something that we can build out over time. And this is something that can also relieve our general fund and put that burden on those that visit our county and share that investment with those who may visit, travel in, or travel through Cobb. And that would free up about $20 million of our general fund to take care of other needs, like perhaps road projects in other areas of the county. So I'm hoping that today we can see opportunity for us, perhaps as we saw back in 2013, when there was a lot of excitement in the room, or as perhaps what we can, look back and see, the vision and foresight of Ernest Barrett and all that Cobb is today. And I hope that we can see opportunity for the future of Cobb. I think you've done a great job. This has been a hard process because we've been trying to consider everyone in Cobb. We've gone back over and over and over and over again trying to get this right. As Commissioner Gamble said before, she was here on the board. I hope that we have an excellent opportunity before us. And I'm hoping that commissioners will support this agenda item. With that, there's a motion on the table. It's been seconded. I'll go ahead and call the question. The motion carries 3-2 with Commissioners Burrow and Gamble in opposition.
Thank you. Our next item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve a memorandum of agreement with Cumberland Community Improvement District for financial support related to the 2024 Mobility Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax Public Education. Approve a memorandum of agreement with Town Center Community Improvement District for financial support of the same. And authorize the corresponding budget transactions and further authorize the chairwoman to execute the necessary documents. Now, to note, this is the revised item that you should have.
Okay. Just on our screens here, I'm seeing agenda item number 2. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Please note this agenda item has been revised. Thank you. And I move that we approve this agenda item as it has been presented.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Yes, Commissioner Burrow.
Did you want to just start it on the line? Or?
Oh, I'm sorry. I only saw your hand up if there was anyone else that wanted to speak.
Okay.
Thank you.
Drew, with the revisions that have been made, the contributions from the 2 CIDs, was that reflective of the task order being awarded to Kimberly Horn, or did anyone ask them if they're okay with it still going forward without the task order going forward to approve their contributions?
What this agenda item does is it authorizes or really approves the agreement with the 2 CIDs in the amount of $50,000 each, as well as makes the fund balance appropriation, at which point that is consistent with the agreements that were approved. Now from here, what we'd like to do is there were questions to understand better what scope is associated with that task order, so we'd like the opportunity to sit with each of you, present what scope was included, if we've missed anything, if we need to revise anything, and then come back at a later date for that task order approval. Okay,
but I know we had a lot of discussion yesterday at work session, and I have issues with the $187,000 coming out of the general fund too for the education, but we can only educate, we cannot advocate.
That's correct.
And the same with the CIDs. They can only educate. What I didn't like about yesterday's meeting was the fact that this has been out there for a while. It was printed on the agenda, made the deadline, and then at the last minute yesterday, we get discussion about a more robust education project, spending more money than the 187 that falls on the county, and accepting the CID's contribution. So, as I said in public yesterday, I don't support the project, period, but I don't think this was fair. To me, it's not saying, I know it was said yesterday that it's not that we don't trust Kimberly Horn, but to me, this is saying we don't trust staff, and I do, to select this. So that's just my comment.
Yes, are there any other comments? Commissioner Gamble.
And Drew, just to kind of piggyback off of Commissioner Burrell, and I know you and I had a conversation because I was also quite caught off guard with the conversation yesterday. In doing so now we're doing it this way, in order to start educating the public, what is going to happen? Are we going to have to send out RFPs? What are the next steps?
The next steps from here, first is pursuant to the last agenda item, we will be coordinating with the Atlanta Transit Link Authority to submit the list of projects. Regarding education, it will be to sit with each of you to again present the scope of what was originally considered, identify any of those things that were potentially left off or anything that needs to be included or changed or modified as necessary, and then bring back that task order at a later date. I would recommend a task order just given the time frame associated with a full RFP process.
So, and because I know you sent us information yesterday, but that was what Kimberly Horn had agreed to back when they signed the contract to do this MSPLOST, what was it, 2018, 17? When did we originally contract with Kimberly Horn for the MSPLOST? Or was it also tied to the CTP?
So just for clarity, no one is tasked or contracted for educational support. We did have 3 separate and distinct task orders associated with developing the project list that dealt with. One was related to community engagement and the fixed route system, some of the transit supportive projects. One was associated with the financial modeling, and one was associated with the high capacity, and then we managed those contracts to keep costs low. In terms of education, no one is engaged to assist staff with an educational effort.
So that educational effort would strictly be with your staff, correct?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Well, you said we haven't contracted with anybody to do the educational portion of it. So that's essentially staff going out and educating the public then?
Well, what is proposed in this agenda item is to set aside the funding to then bring forward a future task order to assist staff, to come alongside staff on that educational effort.
Which I guess then goes back to we would have to go through the RFP process. And you were saying yesterday in the RFP process, essentially it could take up to 6 months to do that. Yet if we stuck with the task order, then essentially we would go to somebody that is currently within our approved list, correct?
So I'm sorry, just to clarify, we would still recommend coming back with a specific task order. That task order may have to revise based on additional conversations with the board, but it would still come through the master task order process in order to make sure, and that's what the task orders were designed for, is this range of $100,000 to $500,000 frame contract. It's not one of the larger contracts that goes through a typical RFP process, but needs to be done quickly. That's what the task order contracts were established to do, a competitive bid at the beginning, and then the ability to have specific task orders off of that master contract. So we would still recommend bringing back a task order for the board's consideration at a later date. Now, the task order itself may need to modify based on additional conversations.
Okay, because I guess where I'm still struggling is it kind of, again, seemed like the conversation yesterday in work session was against Kimberly Horn assisting with the educational piece, and that essentially we were looking out to go to another individual or individuals to help. So if we go to look for other individuals to help, what is the process for that?
I'll show that was my understanding, my takeaway from that, and glad to accept alternative direction from the board was to look at that scope, look at how we needed to modify that scope in coordination with the board. So my takeaways again were more on the scope side than on the vendor side. But again, if there's alternate direction, I'd be glad to take that from the board.
Okay, because my takeaway from yesterday's meeting was there was another individual or individuals or groups that were kind of being targeted to take over the educational piece is kind of where I was after other conversations. So that's why I'm not sure how, again, with this agenda item, with these funds, if another individual outside of the county is going to be doing education, how do we go about that?
Again, we would recommend it to come back for one of our task order contracts. Again, our conversation, my takeaway was more on the scope, perhaps some of the subcontractors that are associated with that, but again, more scope related than anything else. But I stand ready to do the will of the board.
Okay, and I don't mean to be drilling you. So the subcontractors, they have to meet specific requirements in order to be even considered for this outreach, correct?
It would be based on the task order. It would, if any subcontract pass, it would be at the discretion of the prime contractor. I'm not sure I understand.
And who is the prime contractor in this case?
At this point, no one. Again, we would look forward to meeting with each of you to discuss the scope as it was proposed in the Kimmy Horn task order. Again, as that scope, or if anything needs to change, we're glad to take that direction.
Okay, Drew. Even in the revised edition of this agenda item, it specifically says education.
Yes, absolutely.
So how can we say that the education, the materials that you sent us yesterday with Kimberly Horn's plan does include the education and the outreach to get it to the public and the meetings and the pushing it out to community input. And we will have planned meetings like we have with all of our SPLOST projects. But it looks to me like that's already in here, the education piece. But the conversation yesterday, and to me, was maybe it wasn't enough for what the majority of this board anticipated and wanted to expand on that, which would end up being more money. But the other thing is, I thought this was done because of the direction you were receiving to expedite this, to be able to get it out to the public and the language for the referendum to come back in time to be on the ballot in November. So how will this delay affect that?
So I appreciate the opportunity to clarify the question about education. Absolutely, regardless, anything that we bring forward, anything that we're involved in, any of our efforts as staff or as our contractors will all be in an educational vein. That is our limits based on law. We've been very intentional to make sure that the Attorney's Office has reviewed both the contracts as well as the specific task orders. If the task order changes, we would go back to the County Attorney's Office to make sure that they look at that. So I believe the question is more related to, and again, this is more for the board, related to the techniques and the how, rather than the what of education. In terms of delay, we would look to and recommend to bring this back in January for the board's consideration.
And to award it by then, the task order?
The task order, yes, in a January meeting.
Okay.
Commissioner Richardson or Sheffield, do you have any comments with respect to this matter?
I just have a quick question with respect to the location of Kimley Horn. Are they located in Cobb County or outside of Cobb?
They have locations throughout, but it is outside of Cobb.
Okay, it is outside of Cobb. So there was a comment made with respect to the meeting on yesterday and some members possibly being against Kimberly Horn, and I just want to be clear that that wasn't the nature, at least I didn't believe that it was the nature in coming against Kimberly Horn. What we have before us is a very big project. And transportation obviously has been something that the board has been dealing with before I was elected. There was a reference of 2019, so we're looking at about 5 years. I think that we owe it to the taxpayer and the citizens, regardless of how you feel about the Mobility SPLOST, to be prudent in how we move forward in presenting information to the public. The concern for me regarding Kimberly Horn is whether or not they are equipped to present the information in an effective way to the community. So it isn't anything against them, it's less about them, and it's more about the citizens of Cobb County and ensuring that we are putting our best foot forward. There is a lot on the line here. There are a lot of people that are relying on the outcome of this. We're simply doing our due diligence. And that's all I'd like to add.
Thank you, Commissioner Sheffield. Commissioner Richardson, do you have any comments? Okay. Yes, Commissioner Gambrill.
On the CTP, Drew, Kimberly Horn helped with the CTP, correct?
Correct.
And then the outreach that we had for that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Commissioner Richardson, and then
I certainly, especially I know Kimberly Horn is present too. We appreciate the work that Kimberly Horn has done. There's a lot of research and outreach and all of the aspects that go into it and all the thank yous that we've shared with you and staff. It's extended to that work as well. What I do know is that many partners were engaged in that process, that it was not Kimberly Horn leading it by themselves. There were other vendors that were a part of that conversation and that have been a part of creating what we have today. What we do know is that we want to take that moment to really just reflect on everybody's contribution and where everyone fits in and make sure that the task order properly identifies where there may be some blind spots, maybe a lessons learned if you want to create a comparative to that, a lessons learned conversation from the previous exercises into what the new task order needs to outline. So I definitely had expressed some of these thoughts yesterday. I know that there's a trade-off by us not moving forward with the task order today because some of that, especially that financial modeling work can't get started on, sooner. We kind of have to delay that a little bit, but going into the holidays, this is a good time to just take that moment to say, hey, are we covering all the aspects of the education? How are we engaging all of the different vendors that have been involved up to this point? And that the plan for outreach, for community education is comprehensive, and to bring that task order back at the top of the year, feeling rejuvenated. Thank you.
thank you, Commissioner Richardson. Commissioner Sheffield, did you? Okay.
I do have one.
Commissioner Burrow, yes.
So when this comes back in January, if we're approving the $187,000 for the county's part today, when this comes back in January, could it have another price tag on it with the marketing and education piece?
That will be based on future conversations, so we look forward to discussing that as anything changes.
But that would come back to
It would
part of the vote. Okay.
That's correct. Any award would come back to the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. As questions were asked during yesterday's work session, Commissioner Burrow, and I learned about the relationship that Kimberly Horn was going to have with our staff moving into the community and providing education in partnership, it made me wonder if this was adequately resourced, as I did not know the reliance that would be on our staff to communicate to the public about a 30-year undertaking. Let's put this in context. This is not the CTP that we do every 5 years. This is a 30-year undertaking where I think that it is not unreasonable to have some discussion amongst the commissioners with respect to this. And if there are questions asked with respect to any agenda item, if it's the day before, even during a meeting, that is received as, again, as I recognize, there is a high level of diligence amongst all of the serving commissioners on this board. At the last work session, we spoke about a stormwater utility. We had discussion in advance about how we can work together to educate the public on a stormwater utility. Certainly, I think it should be respected that if there are questions about how we engage the public, that the commissioners are the appropriate body of which they can have that discussion. I'm very tired of hearing this is about not trusting staff. Citizens elected us. We work in partnership with staff, engaging in our full authority and our full responsibility as a commissioner and being a representative of those that put us in office does not put us in odds with staff. We have different perspectives. We deal very closely with citizens. It is becoming a very tired argument. I think we should understand that there are different approaches that we all take, and that this Board of Commissioners should be respected in how they engage with the public and with citizens. With respect to Kimberly Horn, thank you for your work with the county. I have not had time to follow up with you, Drew, or with Kimberly Horn on this matter. I'm looking forward to us discussing this during our meeting on Thursday. We have an opportunity to make sure that we are reaching all of our citizens. As Commissioner Sheffield Chair, we have a diverse citizenry that may have very diverse interests with respect to what we are embarking on in light of the resolution we just passed. I'm hoping that we can exercise some diligence in understanding how we are going to be conducting education. That is all we are asking for with how this agenda item has been revised. With that, there's a motion and a second. We've had discussion, and I'll go ahead and call the question. The motion carries 3-2 with Commissioners Gambrill and Burl in opposition.
Thank you.